Welcome to Emotion Chips, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I am your host, Charlie Carroll, along with my capable co-host, Mallory Redmond.
Sweet.
Welcome to the program, Mal.
I'm so glad to
This
be here.
Thanksgiving edition of the program.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Your jacket reminds me of my childhood.
Starter.
Yes, starter, and my grandfather lived in Chicago and was a big Bears fan.
Yeah, go Bears.
There were three teams that I was interested in. Bengals first because I'm an Ohio guy, and I like the stripes on their helmets. I was into how things
Really?
looked even then. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Me too. That's why I like the Miami Dolphins. Their colors, not so much anymore, but when I was a kid.
Yeah, there you go. And then the other one was the Bears. Like I can remember.
I thought you said 3.
Well, I'm getting ready to go there.
Oh.
The next one was the Bears. and Walter Payton. I can remember Walter Payton was just very impressed by him. And so I liked the colors of navy and orange as well. Mm-hmm. And then America's team was the Cowboys. So my dad kind of liked Herschel Walker and the Cowboys. And so those were the teams I followed.
I really wanted a Dallas Cowboys starter jacket, but like the one you pull over.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I knew nothing about the Dallas Cowboys, and I lived in Chicago, and I have no family, nothing. But it's just, I don't know, it was a status symbol.
Well, they were a big market team, and the big market teams just were on television more than anybody else. And
True.
You kind of got to see and be more familiar with them because you saw them play more often.
Sure. And also Sarah Nemec had one, and I wanted to be her.
Oh, another emotion chip here.
Another emotion. They're everywhere, guys. They're everywhere.
Okay.
Sarah Nemec.
Hi, Sarah. If you're listening.
She's not.
Okay. Hopefully she's still around somewhere.
Oh, yeah. She's in Chicago.
Our Thanksgiving edition here, a lot of people are trying to figure out what to do this year in light of most local governments and even federal encouraging people not to do anything.
Well, we weren't even going to have a Thanksgiving episode because you were supposed to be traveling.
I was. And then
That's not very easy to do these days.
We had originally scheduled a trip to Vail to try to take the kids skiing and so on and so forth. But then everything started turning and going a different direction.
Man, I cannot picture you skiing.
Well, it's not I actually have water skied more in my life than I have snow skied. But here in Ohio, you would go over to Indiana to do your snow skiing, and it was more like ice that you were on. Okay. And so I never got into it that much.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. But I think I would enjoy it. I like the challenge. I'm up for challenges.
Sure.
And hey, worst case scenario, stop, drop, and roll a lot.
Oh my gosh, my first time ever skiing, well, because I grew up in Illinois, so we would go to Wisconsin. Yeah. There was like a place there. And somehow, first time ever skiing, I ended up on a black diamond. Whoa. I scooted down it on my butt the whole way. The whole way.
I bet that was cold.
Yeah, better than dying.
Yeah. So we ended up canceling that trip, and now we're here. And I am excited about staying home and making food. I very much enjoy making food.
Yeah.
And so that and drinking some good wine.
Yes.
Always a lot of fun. Uh-huh. And so we thought we would release this episode of the podcast in case you need something to do, our loyal listeners.
Yeah, in case you're feeling a little stuck at home with the same people. Throw those AirPods in
and
pretend
listen,
like you're engaged
and listen
in their
to
conversation.
Our capable co-host.
Yeah. Hello.
I was looking at some statistics because I'm that kind of person.
Sure.
50 million people normally travel for a third of the country normally travels for Thanksgiving.
Interesting.
Which that's a huge. It'll be interesting to see what this year is. How many people do not travel?
Yeah.
I imagine it'll at least drop by half.
I would think so.
How many turkeys do you think Americans consume?
Oh my gosh!
Come on, I won't do this long. Just
I don't know. This is like one of those worksheets in grade school.
Oh, I'm always interested in statistics. Go ahead.
What's the question?
How many turkeys do you think we'll consume?
I don't know.
50 million, 46 million, but
people that are traveling?
Yep. And then there's
every person's traveling with a turkey.
50 is like the crazy statistic here. There were 50 pilgrims. $50.11 is the average amount of money that Americans spend on Thanksgiving dinner, which That's surprising to me.
Wait, what? $50
And
on the
11
whole
cents.
dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm just telling you, that's the statistic.
Okay.
The average time eating the meal is 16 minutes. That's not 50.
That's not healthy.
Pies. 57% of people eat pumpkin pie, whereas pecan is 14%, sweet potatoes 9%, and then 20% for other.
I'm not a big pie person, are you?
Not normally, but around the holidays, I can eat a pecan or pumpkin pie.
Okay.
46.9 million Americans traveled more than 50 miles last year.
Interesting. This
Yeah.
is very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
The last one, and then I'm done, I promise. I just like it, I'm telling you. The average driving distance for people is 41 miles that they drive from home.
Okay.
I mean, I told you.
Really interesting.
Yeah. But
I wonder how many people, are there still 50 people listening?
Probably
Anybody?
not.
Anybody make it through that?
Probably not. They're all gone. I thought we could talk about gratitude.
Oh, that's a shocker on Thanksgiving.
It's
That's good.
especially if you're hustling in life.
Yeah.
You're trying to pioneer something in an area that needs that. And so you're going against the grain, and life is hard. We just got done talking about being an entrepreneur, which means risk. And so when you take on more things, like, it's very hard to develop or keep the right habits that keep you headed in the right direction.
Yeah. I just posted something on my story on Instagram that says gratitude is how you take your power back. And I saw it and I was like, I like it. That's good. And then the more that I keep thinking about it, I'm like, that's really good.
Yeah, for sure.
I really am. That's a good little mantra to have.
Yeah. Do you want to break that down from an emotionship standpoint?
Not really.
Oh.
Okay. Gratitude is how you take your power back.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're in control of your emotions.
Right.
Nobody can do that for you.
Yeah.
And so if you're feeling like the entire world is against you, there has to be a way that you can be grateful for, even if it's grateful for, we talk about how hardships can work for you.
Yeah.
And so even like being grateful for what you're facing because it's strengthening you and growing you, like, then you have the upper hand over whatever the hardship is.
I walked in this morning and Gelman asked me how I was, and I said, I've never been better. And the equation there is, if hardships or difficulty strengthen you for a better tomorrow, then you can say that when things are really tough.
Did you say it like that though? Because that's not super.
No, I
believable.
gave him a little bit of a clue with some sarcasm in there that I'd never been better, and then I followed up with, hey, if hardships are what define opportunity, then
Yeah.
hey, I'm doing great. And the truth of the matter is, like I said to you earlier yesterday, and this is going to sound more dramatic maybe than it is, but like, I experienced a $950,000 swing just in a day, where I discovered a $400,000 liability that needs to be dealt with, and then discovered then a sale of a piece of property for $550,000 fell through. And so if, when I think about gratitude is how you take your power back, it would be very easy for the energy around those two events yesterday that were both unexpected for me. It would be very easy to let them steal my power, but I have to give that hardship or that difficulty my power and stay there. Mm-hmm. And so gratitude is, well, I'm thankful that I caught the $400,000 liability, and now it can be dealt with, even if that takes a lot of time or what have you. And then the same thing with the sale falling through. Like, it is what it is, and you have to respond. And like, what we talk about a lot here is that the energy around any given thing in life is often more powerful and has a bigger effect on the reality than the actual reality itself. And so though we don't have control of everything that happens to us in life, we do have control of our response to what happens to us in life. And so what I have found is, when I'm not practicing gratitude, which they say gratitude is the number one emotion that affects your biology the most, that you can add days and years to your life by practicing gratitude, which literally it is a practice. Mm-hmm. It's not just something you do. You have to practice it. Mm-hmm. But that gives the best results to your body. Like your body really, really responds because feelings are not facts, though they can be. And so when you cultivate the feeling of gratitude, it becomes a fact, a reality to your body. And the thing about it is, you've heard of empty calories.
Yes.
Right?
I've eaten empty calories.
Yeah. And that's what, when we allow any given situation emotionally to pull us out of our center and to give our energy to that negative reality, then we start losing. It's empty emotional calories. We're just spending it. Like anxiety and depression, like not clinical depression, but I'm just saying when you get heavy and you don't have to because you have lost the ability or never developed the ability to control your response to what is screaming at you, it's empty calories. You're literally wasting your energy on something that cannot be controlled.
So when you talk about practicing gratitude, like for your example about this morning where you said you're never better, I mean, honestly,
yeah.
Are you trying to convince yourself of that? Because I feel like you've probably had better mornings than this morning.
I mean, it just depends on which angle you're viewing the race from, right? And I think what I've learned in life, having been an athlete, I've learned that, when you start 2-a-days in summer, you can project and imagine what the Friday or Saturday night games are going to be like and feel like in front of all of your friends and family. Mm-hmm. And so if you can envision that when you start those 2-a-days, then you'll get the benefits of that reality, though it has yet come. And you can only do that by going through it. And then when you're there, I was writing recently and I gave this example that I can remember one of those like Friday night games under the lights, and I had gotten into my second wind, was just covered in sweat and felt amazing. And I just like stopped as there was a substitution happening and just looked around and took a deep breath and knew in that moment that all the sights and smells and sounds would be with me the rest of my life. Like I was present enough to take it in. And so in that moment, I thought back on how bad it felt, in the 95-degree weather on a gravel track, to be running a 2-mile run for time. Mm-hmm. But it's all the same thing, right? Like your story, whether it's page 1 or it's the last page, is all the same thing. And I think maturity allows you to step back and say, I don't really prefer this page or this chapter or this section of the book because it's really hard and it's full of heartache, but it has to be there in order for the book to finish the way that it does. And so when I say never better, I think what I've done is I've separated myself from my emotions, right? The feelings of what's so tough. And I've learned, like God, the idea of God that stands outside of time, that time is an invention. Like I've learned in certain situations to pull myself up and out of that present hardship and just view it within the context of the overall story. Doesn't mean that I don't feel it. It doesn't mean that there's not energy and motion. It just means that I've learned that I don't need to let it control me, because literally worrying or complaining, it will only make things worse. It literally, they are empty emotional calories. It does not serve me. And
well, not only does it not serve you like biologically and otherwise, but it will leave you alone at the table.
Sure.
Like nobody wants to be around that.
For sure. And that's a incredible point that a lot of people don't understand, that the nature of how energy works is it's cycles. Ecclesiastes says that it's seasons, and there's never a clear change in seasons, right? They fade in and out of each other. And so what I say is that life doesn't happen in a vacuum. War doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not isolated. Mm-hmm. One action produces a lot of other reactions that create actions that create reactions. And so if we're not careful, we will never develop the ability to connect our response to our present difficulty to why people are gravitating toward us or away from us. And it's like you said, people want to be a part of other people's life that have learned to surf on the waves of hardship and difficulty. Mm-hmm. And so in some ways, Gelman's an entrepreneur and has his own share of challenges, right? And so he gets it, and I know he gets it. And so I'll just say that. And, though I get a little sarcastic to give him, the real tone of he knows I'm going through some stuff, like he gets it instantly. Mm-hmm. And we don't even have to have a lot of other words because he gets it. But that's what you want. You don't want an easy life, right? You want to see those different pieces. And if you're gonna be king, you got to kill Goliath, right? I mean, you got to go through it. You got to face it. And it's just like seasoned human beings that get excited and their eyes get big when they see a big wave coming. Are just people that realize it does absolutely no good to panic and try to dive underneath that wave. Right. I mean, there's times where you need to dive under it, but waves are opportunities.
Okay, so what are some ways that you practice gratitude, especially in the midst of from the outside looking in, my life is crumbling.
Sure.
Or there's a million hardships all around me.
Yeah. I think one key to that is the idea of practice, right? That it's one thing to get to a point where you understand or you see and you have insight, but what we want to transition to is practice and habits. And so what are the self-defeating habits that undermine gratitude? So gratitude and just finding ways to be grateful for everything you have and recognize more things in your life that you should be grateful for is great. But you've got to identify the undermining habits that steal gratitude from you. And I think it's that kind of equation where you have to practice seeing things and realize the roof that's over my head right now, or the shirt I have on, or the way I slept last night, or the fact that I ate something, man, it could be so much worse. And I'm really, really, really grateful for this. Or even your difficulties, your difficulties grow your competence, and your competence grows your ability to take care of yourself and others. And so I'm really grateful for the difficult things. But, from a psychological standpoint, what a therapist would do is really get into the self-defeating habits that you have that undermine your ability to be thankful and full of gratitude. And so one of those self-defeating habits would be complaining, which is the opposite. I've always said that complaining is, especially for those that are faith-oriented, complaining really is, God, I don't like what's going on, and if I were you, I would do it differently. And I imagine Daniel and David and Esther and Ruth and Mary, Jesus' mother, all of them had times in their life where they would have said, God, I don't like this plan. Even Jesus himself. And if I were you, I would do it differently. But what we see is when people control their response to a situation that feels out of control, magic happens. And so you can't control what happens to you, but you can control your response to it. And if I, saw a potion throughout life, not just the biblical narrative, but even the entrepreneurs and creators and inventors that I respect, it's people that recognize that their response can create magic, whether it's difficulty or uncertainty. When they control their response, magic happens. And that's the whole idea of life happening for us versus just to us. Mm-hmm. And so complaining is the opposite of gratitude. Complaining is the idea that life is not unfolding for me, that it's just happening to me. Complaining is faith that life is more random than anything else, and that God's not in control, and that I can't control my response. And so when I see successful people, one of the biggest differences I see between successful people and people that get stuck in ruts is just they view things differently. They complain about what they're up against versus recognizing, and if you want to dive deep into like the logistics of this, complaining versus gratitude, it's all about where you're spending your emotional energy. The empty calorie idea. If you're complaining, you literally are doing nothing for yourself. You're actually burying yourself and making it more difficult for you to see the way out or the opportunity that is buried in that hardship. Mm-hmm. If you start reminding yourself of why you should be thankful and you start professing, like, I'm thankful for this and I'm really grateful for this, you heighten your senses and the body relaxes and you give yourself an opportunity to see the opportunity in the struggle. And so if you take like the life of Joseph, he was thrown into jail unfairly and somehow still saw an opportunity in that to impress everybody that was there. Now, he had character about him that got him to the jail in the first place. For those that don't know the story, this was a slave that worked his way up through Pharaoh's house and became in charge of this rich person, well-known person's house, Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's wife liked him. He was a good-looking dude, younger guy, and she came on to him a couple of times. And finally, she grabs his swimming trunks, and it wasn't really swimming trunks, but
okay, thanks.
I'm just modernizing the story. And she wants to sleep with him, and he runs out, and then she screams that this slave, tried to rape her, and gets thrown into prison. And so he's got a lot of character underneath him, right? And when he gets to prison, instead of complaining about it, he starts looking for the opportunity. And like any, hospitality person, good hospitality person knows, he just starts finding ways to serve people in jail. Mm-hmm. And that leads to an opportunity for him to get out and to rise to a position of power. Mm-hmm. And so gratitude versus complaining, same emotional energy, exact same. You're going to spend it. Yeah. And it's just like, where are you spending your energy? Are you spending it on complaining and just like saying why you don't feel like life is fair and how you were, treated unfairly or what have you, or why it's always better for other people? Or are you going to see the good in the situation and see it as a hidden opportunity?
I got distracted by Gulman. I'm sorry. Well, we have a question from the crowd. I'm just going to ask.
From our live audience.
Yes, this is the question. At what point is the optimist just not living in reality? What's the difference between true optimism and escapism?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think it's action is the answer, and you're not always going to get it right when you try to get out, right, with the right attitude. And it can appear as just optimism, but your optimism needs to lead to action, and your action hopefully is coming from people that are around you that have been there and done that before. Most of us have had one of the two camps modeled for us, mm-hmm. whether it's complaining or whether it's optimism. And I think the thing that I would really hone in on is whether it's complaining or gratitude. That's just kind of, it reveals your disposition, but you got to keep moving. You can't stop there. So I had this big swing yesterday of almost $1 million, and I woke up, around 5:30 this morning, and my mind was ready to go. Like, the idea was, I want to get into work early and spend my energy thinking of potential solutions versus caving underneath the weight. So I got up and got a great workout in, worked really hard and sweat a lot. And it's just like, I want to use that nervous energy or the questions of what if to serve me.
Okay. Yes, that's great. I love the idea of like being positive and practicing gratitude and like being someone who sees challenges as opportunities, but you're also like a human being. You're not like a human being. You are a human being. And so where do you factor in like voicing, like, I feel afraid, or this is a lot, where it's not necessarily complaining, but it's just like, I feel like there has to be some sense of like overwhelm or fear at some point that's like getting lodged in your body that needs to get out somehow. And so what does that look like to like be positive and practice gratitude and also be a human being?
Yeah, I think what is important there, because to get some of those emotions out, like if you feel afraid or you feel overwhelmed, I think it's good to have people in your life that you can voice that to. And I do think more than anything else, it's just getting that out, right? One of the key distinctions here is you're allowed to acknowledge that you feel afraid or that you're overwhelmed by it. That's fine. But it also comes with the responsibility to understand that after you get that out and you release that, you still have to move in a direction. And so what people don't understand is I'm not being a cheerleader for myself. I honestly, with my whole heart, believe that difficulty and uncertainty is the magic ingredient in opportunity. I think I've told the story on the podcast years ago when friends of ours lost their 3-year-old son to an accident, unexpectedly, just in a moment. That was my second funeral that I had ever done, and Will was a friend of my son who was just a little bit older. Mm-hmm. And so it was a very emotional time, and one of the things I found was a Chinese word that meant tragedy or crisis, but also opportunity. And basically it was all wrapped up in that one word, that with every crisis or every tragedy, there is an opportunity. And so I'm not really cheerleading myself and trying to talk myself into anything as much as I honestly believe that there's an opportunity in every difficulty. And if you will just be patient and keep going with the right attitude, it will really serve you and you will become a person of deep character that other people want to be around. I think the balance to that is having those people in your life that, especially when it initially hits you, that you can just vent and you can just say it out loud, like, this is really scary or this is really frustrating. But then from there, you have to very quickly find what to be thankful for in the moment and not allow the energy of what could go wrong to spin you into some sort of negative cycle.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I've told you before, like, people that are like chronically positive, there's almost a level of like fake to that to me, because that's just to me, that's just not real.
Sure.
Like, that's just not real life. And so I appreciate vulnerability a lot.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people live in a chronic state of complaining and call it vulnerability, because vulnerability is like this hot topic, and it's like really brave to be vulnerable, which is true. But there's a difference between vulnerability and complaining that I think people blur the lines sometimes to cling to a life of complaining and call it vulnerability.
Sure.
Which is...
Well, and in all things, just getting back to the idea of energy moves in circles, right? It's not a straight line. You've got to get out of that initial negative pattern where you're overwhelmed by the injustice or the uncertainty, what's going wrong. And you need to vent and say, okay, this is frustrating. But the other side of it is, you don't always have a lot of time to be vulnerable initially and upfront. Maybe you've got to get through the day or the week, what have you. It is a very tough time for anyone right now, especially those that own their own businesses and are responsible for other people's lives.
For sure.
In some of our businesses, we're experiencing 50% of the traffic, of the sales, with 100% of the expenses.
Right.
And so, I'm in a situation where I'm having to evaluate, what employees you let go and what employees you keep, which is not fun. Mm-hmm. And so you don't always have the opportunity to be vulnerable or talk about it as much as you'd like on the front side. But you do need to have those people in your life that understand the pressure that you're under and can give you good feedback, or at least just let you talk. You don't really need answers.
Sure.
You just need the opportunity to talk. But then you got to move.
Yeah.
You got to go. Yeah. And life is moving. The planet is moving, and you've got to move.
Yeah. I think one thing I've been thinking about as you've been talking that could serve people well, because sometimes when it's so the circumstances are so heavy, like moving, just taking one step, it's like it feels impossible, right? And so something that I have been leaning into lately is like using like positive emotion ships to serve me well. So for example, like music, like songs that really pump me up. Yeah. My daughters are loving Whitney Houston's Higher Love song. Oh, yeah. And so I'll like blast it in the car and they dance and they sing and they laugh. And like, obviously that does something for me, right? And so sometimes I just play that song when I feel like I need to like lift my spirits a little bit. And I have an emotion ship with the song. Or like a movie that I feel like I connect to, or a show that makes me laugh, or whatever. But like using things that I have positive experiences attached to that might like lighten me a little bit, so I feel like I can take a step and keep moving. Yeah. Music is huge for me.
Sure.
In doing that.
Yeah. I mean, again, the practice of gratitude, it's about habits. And so the first habit that I would pay attention to and try to get rid of is complaining. But to your point, the second habit that you need to pay attention to is self-neglect, right? That yes, you're a part of a story and it's your story and it's moving forward and it's full of good times and bad times and challenges and what have you, but what can be consistent? And so you're going to, if you're listening to this, you're going to see a theme of uncertainty and certainty, or what is out of control and what you can control, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how we bring balance to all of this and get these things to serve us. Neglecting self, right, or self-neglect is one of those things that does not have to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
And so you're spending energy, whether it's complaining, using the first habit or practice, whether it's complaining or practicing gratitude, you're using the same muscles, right? It takes emotional muscle to complain. Mm-hmm. It takes emotional muscle to use gratitude. One serves you, one doesn't. Yeah. Self-neglect is another example of you don't have to neglect yourself and your own health and your own mental, emotional, or spiritual well-being just because you're going through a hardship. Now, going through uncertainty and that hardship will take energy out of you. The question is, do you fight energy with energy? And so there are times that I'll work out twice in a day because I'm pissed and I want to spend that energy serving me. Mm-hmm. So the way I do that is I'm frustrated about something. Mm-hmm. And so that produces energy, right? And I'm going to throw that in the oven, right? We're getting ready to watch Polar Express, and I think about them like throwing the coal in the train to get it going.
Your family is watching that?
Yeah.
Oh, is that a tradition?
Yeah, it's a tradition.
Nice.
But like they throw coal to get the train. Like coal is energy and fuel. It gets the train going. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it doesn't matter. If I have to use negative energy to create a positive result in me, that's what I'll do.
Sure.
I mean, it's last night I found out about the potential asset falling through, or the asset falling through, and it's like 10:30 at night, and I was this close after having already worked out once, in the morning, of just getting outside and going for a long run.
Sure.
And it's like I'm going to use that energy to serve me. Mm-hmm. And so every encounter that we have an opportunity to face what is out of control with a controlled response. We have an opportunity to face uncertainty and bring certainty to it. And that's what serves us. And so I would just say, like, a second habit when it comes to moving forward in life and allowing your circumstance to serve you is investing in yourself, whether that's putting on music, whether that's, using supplements, whole food supplements to feed your cells, whether it's, running, I mean, there are a whole host of things. There are certain movies that I watch when I'm going through certain seasons.
Well, and I think investing in yourself, again, is a way of investing in other people, because that energy, like you said, is going somewhere. And so if you don't use it in a healthy way, like going running, for me, I'll take it out on the people around me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, my husband's asking me a question and I'm answering him like he's trying to kill me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's the energy. It's in me.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and again, with this podcast, what we talk about so much is like the energy that surrounds everything. And we say it's the real reason everything happens for a reason, because often we're looking at the result of something versus the energy that is driving that something. And so awareness is the word. And once you become aware, you finally have the opportunity to grab the reins of your life and to steer it. I grew up riding horses, and I can tell you so many times where just being really young and small compared to that horse, something would happen and I would drop the reins, and then that horse was going wherever it wanted to go. Well, the reason why so many people feel like their life is completely out of their control is because they don't have the reins in their hands. What are the reins? The reins is the energy that is driving the result, but most people only focus on the result and wonder why they can't change it, when they need to just become aware of the energy that is driving the result. And so in this situation, it's developing the right habits to practice gratitude, to where you can meet uncertainty with certainty, or what feels like being out of control with a controlled response. And whether that's being grateful versus complaining, whether it's investing in self and having a great self-care program for yourself versus self-neglect. Or the third thing that I would say in light of the first two things is, from a habit standpoint, is procrastination. Like, we have got to stop procrastinating when it comes to like grabbing the energy that is around us and using it to serve us. Like, find small ways today to recognize the energy around your life and the energy around what's going on in your life, and find ways to grab a hold of it and start steering the things that you can steer, or controlling the things that you can control.
Can you give an example?
Well,
of something small somebody could do, like, right in this moment?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're lethargic and, you constantly have headaches, or you don't feel like you have the energy or desire to live right now, that you're just a victim of what we call your life, right? You don't like where you're at. You don't like who you're with. I would start off by saying, okay, I feel out of control. I feel uncertain about all of these things. I would get a journal and I would start journaling out what you think you do want. And so, if you do want a different job that is more aligned with your passions, I would figure out what my passion is. And then I would say, okay, how do I get there? What are the emotional, physical, and mental habits that I need to write down to get me there? And so, procrastination confronts, first of all, the emotional attitude of complaining versus gratitude. And then from an intellectual standpoint, or even just a physical standpoint with the self-care, like, you need to get that plane moving, or that car moving. I grew up in a house where my dad was a bodybuilder. And one of the things, like the strongman games, like the world strongman contest, they would tie a rope around these guys, and then they would tie it to a plane, and they would pull, like a plane a certain amount of distance. What is true about moving a lot of weight, like if you feel heavy right now, or you feel like you're being crushed underneath your world, a reality of that is it takes a little bit to get that thing going, but the more momentum you get, the easier it is to pull it. Mm-hmm. And so if you will just recognize that you're going to have to put some time in and stop procrastinating to get your life moving, then motion, right, leads to more motion. An emotion ship is energy in motion, right? Or emotion is energy in motion. And so you might not be able to change your job right now, but you can walk 10,000 steps today, right? And so sometimes I don't have direct access to the things that I want to change in my life today, but I have indirect access to them because I can get everything around them moving. And so it's disingenuous and naive to think that you can start off with changing the things you want to change in your life versus changing the things you can change in your life. Yeah. And so one of the consistent characteristics of people who grab a hold of their life and get it to work for them is that they get out there and they are self-starters, right? And so if, when we say life doesn't happen in a vacuum, there's going to be an overwhelming amount of evidence that you are out of control if there's one area of your life that keeps kicking your butt. What you typically do not see is a person who has a lot of order in all of these areas, and then one area is out of order. It typically is a systemic, holistic problem. Mm-hmm. Now, there are negative disciplines or behaviors that we have that is being driven by a negative emotion. Like, I was worried about my weight my whole life, and so I run all of the time just to keep weight off. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a positive. There's not integrity in that desire. But when you have healthy desires, then motion leads to more motion. And in some cases, if you're still waiting for the right person in your life, that can take time. Yeah. And in the meantime, you need to let your disappointment serve you. Right. And so I would just say that when it comes to living a life of gratitude, we've talked about 3 practices or habits that you can really live into. The first one is stop complaining. Fill yourself with positive energy, and every time you're tempted to complain, say something positive about the same situation. The second one is look into whether or not you're investing in yourself on a regular basis. Invest in your energy. You can do that. Mm-hmm. Eat right? It's important that you feel and look the way you want to look and feel. And then third, don't procrastinate. Make a list of the things that you need to get done and go after them. Put them in order and go after them.
Yeah. I think especially for that, well, I guess for all of them, especially for that last one, it can be so easy for, at any point in the journey, for shame to block you, right? Oh, well, I was supposed to do this part of my list today and I didn't, sure. So I suck and I can't do anything. And so I think that's something that's important to keep tabs on of tomorrow's a new day.
For sure.
It's a fresh start.
Yeah.
You get to try again.
Well, and that goes back to the same illustration of, each paragraph in the book or each page in the book is all a part of the same story.
Yeah.
And so, when I miss a day that I was planning on investing in myself and working out and it doesn't happen, then I can allow that to turn into 2 days because I'm down on myself. Or I just realize that it's a day that I missed it and I need to come back and I'll make it up.
Right.
You do have to give yourself some room, sure. Right? It's important not to turn one mistake into 2 mistakes because you glorified that one mistake. Mm-hmm. And shame and guilt go away when you stop worshiping yourself.
What's that face?
I almost said a bad word for emphasis.
Ooh, do it.
Gilman says no.
Oh, no? Okay, don't do it.
No, but guilt and shame go away when you stop worshiping yourself. Why, and obviously a lot of us are conditioned for this, but why in the world would you continue to beat yourself up when you made a mistake? You wouldn't do that. I mean, most healthy people would not do that to their children or want that for their children, and it's a form of self-worship.
Okay, but just stop. Because this is harder. This is easier said than done. You struggle with this.
Sure, I'm not saying it's easy.
Don't shame people by trying to get people not to shame themselves.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying it's similar to complaining. It just doesn't do anything for you.
Agreed. But it's very difficult.
And what needs to be identified is what is the emotion, what is the energy and motion behind it. Your coffee is going
water.
everywhere.
It's water. It's condensation.
Condensation. Whoa. But you
Was
see
that a
what,
rhetorical question?
You see what I'm saying? I mean, at the end of the day, and of course I'll admit that I struggle with this, but it comes back to like truth precedes maturity. Understanding precedes maturity. You understand it, and that's why I can talk about it, before you get it grafted into your life as a normal habit or behavior. And what I have come to understand is that shame and guilt are a part of still glorifying self. You should have been better. You could have done better than this. You are better than this. And it just comes back to acknowledging that I'm free to make mistakes. Now, where it's difficult is when other people are involved, because you don't want to, when your intentions are right, you don't want to hurt other people. Right? And so it's just difficult, or it comes back to like, okay, acknowledge your failure and then keep moving forward. But this is, I mean.
Well, I think it's a lot like the hardships where you can allow the failure to work for you, right? And to teach you and to grow you. And it doesn't have to be something that you sit in, but you can allow it to move you forward.
For sure. And again, based on your upbringing and based on how you're wired, like I'm an Enneagram 3, so I'm the performer, like it's going to affect me more than it is the next person that isn't oriented or wired that way. But it just comes back to, I've said it a couple of times on this podcast, that great quarterbacks have short memories, because they know that if they worship the fact that now they just messed up, their statistics or their quarterback rating, the chances of throwing another interception is higher. Yeah. Versus it's like, no, my motive is to help my team win. And I know that they're going to be great throws, and there are going to be some throws that I wish I had back. And so I'm just learning that guilt and shame is a byproduct of worshiping self.
That's good. I don't know if I've heard you say that before.
I don't know that I've ever said it before.
Oh.
New things coming out on the podcast.
Yeah, new material, everyone. That's good. I'm grateful.
Do you want to wish our listeners a happy Thanksgiving as we close out
friends.
This episode?
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Friendsgiving.
Happy Friendsgiving, loyal listeners. We love you. Did anybody text you for Lemonheads?
Yes.
Oh. Are you sending them or giving them money for Lemonheads?
I'm going to send them to them.
Perfect. Okay.